Turn on your tap and clean water comes out. It feels infinite, automatic, free, like air. You probably haven't thought once today about where it comes from or whether it could ever stop. But here is a fact that should genuinely unsettle you. Of all the water on planet Earth, all those vast blue oceans covering most of the globe, all the ice, all the rain, the amount that is fresh, liquid, and actually available for humans to drink is a vanishingly thin sliver, and we are draining it faster than the planet can refill it. So let's ask the question almost nobody dares to follow all the way to the end. What would actually happen if the world's fresh water ran out? Not ran low, ran out. We're going to walk through it stage by stage, in the order it would unfold. And I'll be honest with you, the first thing to collapse isn't your drinking glass. It's something you'd never expect. And by the end, you'll understand why some scientists now quietly call water the most dangerous resource on Earth. But first, you have to grasp just how little fresh water we're really working with, because this number is the foundation of everything that follows, and it's almost unbelievable. Look at a globe, and the planet seems drowning in water. Over 2/3 of the Earth's surface is covered in it. But almost all of that, around 97%, is salt water in the oceans, completely undrinkable for us and useless for growing crops. That leaves only about 3% as fresh water. And here's the catch. Most of that 3% isn't available either. The vast majority of it is locked away, frozen solid in glaciers, ice caps, and the great ice sheets, or buried deep underground out of reach. When you add it all up, the fresh water that's actually accessible to us, in rivers, lakes, and shallow groundwater, amounts to a tiny fraction of 1% of all the water on Earth. Picture all the water on the planet as a giant barrel. The drinkable, reachable share that has to sustain every human, every farm, every city, and every land animal is barely a few drops at the bottom. That's it. That's what the entire living world runs on. We've simply never noticed, because those few drops keep getting recycled by nature again and again. But what if that recycling couldn't keep up? So let's start the clock and imagine the fresh water vanishing. And here's the first shock. The first crisis isn't thirst, it's hunger. Because the single biggest thing we use fresh water for isn't drinking or showering or anything in your home. It's farming. Around 70% of all the fresh water humanity withdraws goes to agriculture, to irrigating the crops that feed the entire planet. And this is the part people never see, because the water doesn't come out of a tap in front of them. It's poured invisibly onto fields hundreds of miles away. Take that water away, and the crops fail. Not in one country. Everywhere irrigation is needed, all at once. Fields turn to dust. The harvests that fill every grocery store on Earth simply don't happen. So long before the world is gasping with thirst, it would be starving. The shelves would empty because the food on them was, in a very real sense, made of water you never saw. This is the thing almost nobody realizes. When we talk about running out of water, we're really talking about running out of food first. The drought wouldn't just dry your throat, it would empty your plate. And it goes deeper than the crops in the field, because of a hidden idea that, once you understand it, changes how you see literally everything around you. It's called virtual water, the water embedded invisibly in the things we make and eat. Almost everything you consume took an astonishing amount of water to produce, water you never see and never think about. That morning cup of coffee? Producing the beans took well over 100 liters of water. A single hamburger? By the time you account for growing the grain to feed the cattle and everything else, the figure runs into the thousands of liters for one burger. The cotton t-shirt you're wearing, the paper in a book, the chip in your phone, all of it has a hidden water cost baked in during manufacturing. So in a world without fresh water, it isn't just farms and drinking glasses that stop. The entire machinery of making things grinds toward a halt. Clothing, electronics, paper, processed food. Nearly every product in modern life quietly depends on fresh water somewhere in its creation. You don't just drink water, you wear it, you read it, you drive it, you live inside it. And in this scenario, all of that begins to seize up at once. Now we arrive at the crisis everyone pictures first, the cities and the thirst. A human being can survive only a few days without water, far, far less time than without food. So as the taps run dry, the most immediate and desperate need becomes simply staying alive. And here's what makes cities uniquely fragile. A modern city is an enormous, dense mass of people who produce almost no water of their own. Every drop is piped in from rivers, reservoirs, and wells, often from very far away. That whole system depends on a steady source at the other end of the pipe. Cut off the source, and a metropolis of millions has, within its own borders, almost no way to get water at all. We've already seen terrifying previews of this. Major cities around the world have come frighteningly close to what officials called Day Zero, the day the taps would literally be switched off, and people would have to queue at distribution points for a strict ration. Each time, disaster was just barely avoided. But those were temporary droughts in a world that still had water elsewhere to draw on. In a world where the fresh water is simply gone, there is no elsewhere. There's no neighboring region to truck it in from, no deeper well to drill. The city, that triumph of human civilization, turns out to be one of the most water-dependent and water-helpless things we have ever built. But here's a consequence that almost nobody sees coming, and it reveals just how deeply water is woven into everything. The lights would go out. Most people have no idea that water and electricity are joined at the hip. A huge share of the world's electricity comes from what are called thermoelectric power plants, those running on coal, natural gas, or nuclear fuel. And every one of them works on the same basic principle. They use their fuel to boil water into steam. The steam spins a turbine, and that generates electricity. Then, enormous amounts of water are needed again just to cool the whole system down. In many countries, power generation is one of the single largest users of water there is, rivaling even agriculture in some places. So, in a world without fresh water, a massive chunk of our power supply would fail because the plants would have nothing to turn into steam and nothing to cool themselves with. And the moment the electricity falters, everything else collapses with it, including, in a cruel twist, the pumps and treatment plants that move and clean what little water remains. Water needs energy to be delivered, and energy needs water to be made. They prop each other up, knock out one, and they fall together, dragging modern civilization down between them. And while all of this is happening to us, something quieter and just as devastating would be unfolding across the natural world. Every living thing on land needs fresh water, not just humans. The rivers, lakes, marshes, and wetlands of the planet are entire worlds teeming with life, and they are built on fresh water. As that water disappears, these ecosystems don't just shrink, they die. And this isn't a far-off hypothetical, it's already happening at an alarming rate. Wildlife that depends on fresh water has been collapsing faster than almost any other kind of life on Earth, with freshwater animal populations plummeting dramatically in recent decades. Lose the fresh water entirely, and you don't just lose fish and frogs. You unravel the food webs that countless creatures, and ultimately we, depend on. Forests would wither. The land itself would slowly turn toward desert. A planet without fresh water isn't just a planet of thirsty humans. It's a planet stripped of most of its life on land, reduced to oceans of undrinkable salt water lapping at dead, dry continents. Now, at this point, you might be thinking, this is a nightmare scenario, sure, but surely it could never really happen? And you'd be partly right, and partly, worryingly, wrong. The truth is, the entire planet will not run bone dry overnight. This total scenario is an extreme we use to understand the stakes. But the unsettling part is that pieces of it are already coming true, right now in specific places, and the trend is going the wrong way. Consider what's happening beneath our feet. A huge amount of our fresh water doesn't come from rivers at all. It's pumped up from underground reservoirs called aquifers, vast natural stores of water built up over thousands and thousands of years. And in many of the world's most important farming regions, we are pumping that ancient water out far faster than rain can ever refill it. We are, in effect, spending a savings account that took millennia to fill, and getting nothing back in. Some of these crucial aquifers are now in steep, measurable decline. When that underground water is gone, it is, on any human timescale, gone for good. This isn't a prediction about the distant future. In parts of the world, wells that families and farms have relied on for generations are already running dry, and water has to be trucked in just to keep people going. And there's a second slow-motion crisis stacked on top of it, high up in the mountains. The ice is vanishing. For a huge portion of humanity, the fresh water they drink doesn't fall as convenient rain. It comes from glaciers and mountain snow. All year round, these frozen reservoirs slowly melt and feed the great rivers that hundreds of millions of people downstream depend on for drinking and farming. They're like giant natural water towers, releasing their supply gradually, season after season. But as the planet warms, these glaciers are shrinking, and many have already lost a significant share of their ice in just the last few decades. Some mountain ranges are on track to lose their working glaciers within a matter of decades. And here's the cruel paradox. As a glacier melts faster, for a while there's actually more water rushing down, a temporary flood, but once the ice is gone, the tap is permanently shut off. The river that a vast population leaned on simply dwindles. We are, in slow motion, draining one of the planet's most important water towers, and a great many people are standing directly downstream. So is there any way out? Are we simply doomed to watch the water disappear? Not necessarily. And this is where a bit of hope enters the story, though it comes with hard limits we have to be honest about. The most obvious idea is staring us in the face: the oceans. The planet is covered in water. It's just too salty to use. So why not simply remove the salt? This is called desalination, and it's very real. Entire nations in the driest parts of the world already survive by turning seawater into fresh drinking water in massive plants. So, problem solved? Not quite. Here's the catch, and it's a big one. Desalination is extremely energy hungry. Ripping the salt out of seawater takes enormous amounts of power, which makes the water expensive and, depending on how that energy is produced, can carry a heavy environmental cost. Remember that water and energy are locked together, and desalination sits right at that painful intersection. It can save a wealthy coastal city, but it's far harder to use it to irrigate the vast inland farmlands that actually feed the world. There are other lifelines too: recycling and cleaning wastewater so the same water can be used again and again, smarter irrigation that grows more food with far less water, and simply wasting less of what we have. None of these is a magic wand on its own, but together, they're the reason this nightmare scenario is a warning rather than a prophecy. The tools exist. The question is whether we use them in time. So step back and look at the whole strange picture. We live on a world drowning in water, and yet the thin sliver we can actually use turns out to be the hidden thread holding up almost everything. Our food, our cities, our electricity, the web of life across entire continents. Pull that thread, and it doesn't just leave us thirsty. It unravels the entire fabric of the modern world, in an order most of us would never guess. The most precious substance on Earth was never gold or oil. It was always the plain, clear water you watched swirl down the drain this morning without a second thought. We treat it as infinite because, for our whole lives, it always has been. But always is a story we tell ourselves, and the few drops at the bottom of the barrel have never once asked for our permission to run out.